times I remember fondly the way the road curves through the autumn leaves, and at the church where the preacher gave the message, as I sat safe and warm on Father's knee.
Let me tell you something about my dad that I never knew. I knew that he was born in western Massachusetts, that his parents were Harriet and Harlow, that his older brothers were Dennis and Bill, and that his own dad passed away when he was just a young man. Well, I knew that he was a self-taught jazz piano player, a respected artist, and a tenured professor at the University of Toronto. What I didn't know, until I started working on this film, was the extent to which my dad was loved by so many people. Charles Taylor Morey was born in 1927 in Cummington, Massachusetts, to a very old New England family. When he was 9 years old, his parents purchased an old farmhouse built in 1795 in nearby West Cummington.
Dad and his two brothers had pretty quiet upbringing, until they were at least in their late teens. Western Massachusetts is like a forested wilderness. They used to have to go to school in the wintertime in a horse-drawn sleigh, and they had to go to school in Dalton, which was like 10 or 15 miles. It would have been quite a chore just to get to school and back.
Chuck served in the U.S. Air Force near the end of the war as a meteorologist, reporting on weather inside the continental United States. In 1947, he enrolled at Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts, but quickly became disillusioned with what he described as the asphyxiant atmosphere of a school full of business magnates, subversive politicians, dilettantes, and cold, calculating scientists.
I happen to have a diary that Dad left behind, and he writes about this epiphany that he's had while an undergrad at Williams College, and he suddenly discovers, I'm going to be a painter.
The beginning of a new era. Williams College is behind. What is ahead? Whatever it is, it will be creative, not coldly analytical. Perhaps one day I shall look back on this entry and say, how utterly prophetic. The step has been taken, and for better or worse, I shall paint.
I got a bicycle, and I bicycled cross country to Black Mountain College. This is the place where Joseph Albers was teaching.
Black Mountain College, this revolutionary sort of college that was set up in North Carolina in the 1940s. Many of the professors were members of the School of the Bauhaus.
He came in the latter part of my stay there. We hadn't known each other very long. We were there only a matter of about 3 weeks or so, and we got married.
Money quickly became a problem for the young couple. They left Black Mountain just weeks after Chuck had arrived and moved to Indianapolis. His lofty ambition to be an artist was becoming stymied by the mundane demands of daily life.
He was a fantastic teacher. He had taught painting to other people, and they were just smitten with him. And I decided that anyone that brilliant needs to get some kind of qualifications so he can teach, because you can't earn any money as an artist. But he could as an historian. He really had incredible promise.
Chuck re-enrolled in Williams College, the very same institution he'd previously been so anxious to leave. It was an entirely different experience for him this time. His academic and artistic performance quickly gained the attention of faculty and staff.
He would go to school during the day while I watched Taylor. Then I would go work evening shift at the wire factory while he took care of the baby. And this went on until I was laid off. We went to the dean, said, we're just simply going to have to quit. The dean took one look at Chuck's qualifications and the tests he'd passed and everything, so he bumped him up to the third year. And so then he only had one more year of undergraduate work. And at the end of that time, he won an award that gave him $3,000 a year for 2 years, no strings attached. And by now, I'd already had another baby. I've had Dunstan. And we decided to take advantage of that $3,000 a year for him to get a graduate degree. And we went to the University of Georgia, and Scott was born down there in Athens, Georgia.
An employment scout for Dartmouth College in New Hampshire discovered Chuck as he was searching through all the universities for a qualified teacher. Dartmouth is one of the 8 Ivy League schools.
He hired Chuck on the spot and took him a year early than he intended to have him, because he was afraid that if he let him go someplace else, he'd never get him again. He was so impressed with Chuck's ability to teach. So he got that job at Dartmouth. And we found a piece of property up there in Lyme. It was absolutely heaven on earth for the children.
Tell us about the rope swing in Lyme and how much fun it was.
The rope swing.
Like we'd start with the tire, wrapped right around behind the tree.
Oh, right.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So he'd start running and I'd haul him around, and then he'd plant his feet on the edge of the
That's
hill,
right, yeah, we
and
had
then haul
technique.
me around. We got like considerable momentum built up with doing this like 2-stage launching.
Holy
And
cow.
like we could swing it like
Way out there. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, like if we fell off, we'd been killed.
I remember getting beazled. I don't know if you guys got beazled. Taylor and I got beazled. Beazle. And he'd stick his teeth out and do this and tickle us. And we'd squeal, "Don't beazle me, Daddy, don't beazle me." Of course, wanting him to beazle us, right?
Dad used to spend time with Dunstan and I doing cutouts with scissors. So we'd just take like stationery paper, and the favorite thing was to fold it in half and make intricate cutouts, so you end up with little fanciful creatures. It was a favorite activity.
During the time I was pregnant with Adrienne, Chuck got a regular job as an instructor at the University of Toronto in their art department. And as a matter of fact, the art department didn't even exist. They brought Chuck in and built the art department, with Chuck as one of the main instigators of the program there.
In the fall of 1960, Chuck started his new position as associate professor at the University of Toronto. The rest of us joined him in Canada a year later. We bought a terrific house in Pickering, got a cool trampoline, had a cat named Petronius who climbed a 2-story ladder to eat pigeons on the roof, built an enormous studio for painting and sculpture, made lots of friends in the art community, and hosted lots and lots of parties.
Dad was the life of the party. I mean, played his boogie-woogie piano, and he was charming, and he was good-looking. People loved him.
We were the most popular kids on the block. Chuck, with his wonderful personality and tremendous capacity for drinking and sharing his drink with others, because we made our own wine. Yeah, we were very popular.
By now, you probably know where this is going. Dad loved to drink, and drink, and drink. By the end of 1969, he had lost his job, his marriage, and his family.
I was reading an article in the newspaper at one point about some guy in around 1992 or so had lost his tenured position at the University of Toronto, and it was the first time it had happened in 25 years. And I did the math and I thought, 92 minus 25 equals the year that Dad lost his tenured position. He crashed and burned about as bad as you could do, because he kind of self-destructed.
In 1971, Chuck came to Colchester to help Robin prepare for the covered wagon trip she was planning. While he was there, he met Willie.
She was working in a little deli, and Dad started coming in and bringing her little bouquets of flowers that he picked from the side of the road. And so she became very smitten, and they actually ran away together 2 months after they met.
They moved into the guest house on Harriet's property in West Cummington, and while they were living there, Veronica was born.
My dad was the town drunk. I knew it from an early age. My parents were very loving parents, but the alcohol was a problem, and it was a problem for both of them. When Mom was out of commission and she was in bed and Dad wanted to go to the bar, he would just take me to the bar with him, and I would sit at the bar and eat maraschino cherries, and Dad would play the piano for drinks.
With the help of her sister Getcha, Willie and Chuck were able to buy a piece of property in Cummington. They had no money for anything else, so the family lived in a tent while all their possessions were stored under tarps.
There was a medicine cabinet that was nailed to a tree so I could brush my hair in the mirror in the morning. And my mother had a campfire going every day, and she would cook me oatmeal or cream of wheat over the fire every day before I went off to school. But then it started to get colder, and it wasn't feasible for us to stay in the army tent. So I ended up coming to Ontario with my mom, and my dad was alone there.
With lots more help from friends, family, and members of the community, Chuck was ultimately able to design and build a post and beam house out of rough-hewn lumber.
He drank until I was about 11 or 12. Mom says that it was because she told him, we're going to lose everything we've built. And he just had an epiphany and realized that he had to stop. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and he became someone that I really respected. He always says that it was like God took the obsession away. It was instantaneous for him.
We were having Christmas at my place in Acton, and everybody convinced me to let him come because he'd already been on the wagon. That was a sudden transition. He showed up when he said he was going to, and everybody had a good time. He played the piano, and that was a very happy occasion.
Posthumously, I found a notebook in the basement of his house, some notes which pretty clearly indicate he had some kind of instruction in harmony. I had often thought in my life, what if he had chosen music instead of visual art as his medium? He would have been pretty good, because he was already pretty good even though he never practiced.
Dad would get wailing away on the piano, and like all five of us would be jumping around and dancing and just everybody enjoying the music. If I had to identify the happiest that I ever saw him, it would have been when he was playing the piano.
The famous dad laugh. He laughed so hard, we were literally afraid he was going to die of a heart attack.
He had a great sense of humor. He made people laugh uproariously.
Something would hit him and the first thing he'd lose his breath.
We'll be sitting around the table or something, and all of a sudden, to the extent where we think he's going to die of apoplexy.
There was the word apoplexy that was a part of all of our childhoods, I think.
So now we all want to know what's so funny. So after half an hour, we finally find out that hellish dog rot is a Spoonerism for hot dog relish. By that time, we're completely laughed out.
Dad's laugh was tremendous. It was one of my favorite parts of him.
My parents would say, "We gaan naar buiten," which, we're going outside, and over there it's gaan naar buiten.
Chuck's own father, Harlow, was a plumber, electrician, carpenter, and mechanic. In his day, people in town had enjoyed reaching out to him for help with all things practical.
He was a jobber. He repaired things for people, their plumbing or their wiring. And people were always glad to see him show up, not just because he was going to fix the stuff, but because he was funny.
He would bring Dad with him to things that he was fixing. So Dad picked up a lot of skills from his dad. Everyone loved Dad. He worked at the elderly housing in town, and he would hay the field beside it and also do all the snow removal and, fix people's windows and doors and things like that. He was involved with the Cummington School of the Arts, and I can remember going to very fancy artistic parties with lots of jewelry and big flowing skirts. He had this kind of different persona when he had an art opening. His posture would change, and he was proud. and he knew what he was worth compared to who he was at home, where it felt like he wasn't quite sure of who he was. The way Dad handled his art was if someone was like struck and someone came in and they were like, wow, you know, Dad would literally take it down and say, you should have this. And it drove Mom crazy because, you know, he had a master's in fine arts and you're an artist and you should be selling your work and stop giving it away. I came here in January '99. I would go down to visit Mom and Dad in Massachusetts and they would come up to visit me. But Mom told me she couldn't stand the heartbreak that Dad experienced every time I left. So she finally decided, let's just move back to Canada.
In 2004, Chuck and Willie sold their home on Nash Road and moved into a charming house next to the river in Neustadt, Ontario. Being so much closer to family paved the way for a new season of restored connections with kids and grandkids.
Dad really led a structured life according to the clock, particularly as the older he got, the more structured his life got in terms of he got up at exactly the same time, he had his breakfast, you know, he did the crossword puzzle, you know, had his lunch, went down for a nap, and then, you know, when he got up and then 4 o'clock, it's time for Super Mario Karts, and it was so great watching Dad and Willie play Super Mario Karts.
Here we go. Anybody I've ever known has thought it was so cool that Grandma and Grandpa played Mario Kart. Yeah. And I thought it was really cool how that game was like such a connection for both of them. Like even like years after Grandpa passed away, Grandma would be playing and Luigi would do something and she'd be like, oh, chop, like damn it. I feel like I got such a good idea of what love is supposed to look like. I was always so enamored with what their love looked like. Grandpa was so much more my dad than my dad actually was, so I got all of the things that you're supposed to get from a dad from Grandpa, like unconditional love.
Well, after you gone, and left me sighing, after you gone, there's no denying, baby, you feel blue, you feel sad, you lost the bestest friend you ever had.
He was so friendly and his eyes were always so twinkly, and everyone who met him fell in love with him because he was just a huge, gentle spirit. You know, he was so loving, so compassionate, always willing to give you another chance, and, you know, always trying to see the positive in people.
I got a lead in a theatrical production, and opening night, in my dressing room, I get this gigantic vase of flowers, and I'm assuming it's for my family. And no, it was from my father. My dad from Massachusetts had sent me flowers on opening night for this show to the theater. That was really incredibly special.
So you can see precisely what you're getting with this great big fat screen. Yeah, how about that?
He loved hearing about successes. He loved, you know, people telling him stories about something that they won at, and he loved it. And he would, you know, bravo, bravo. And he, you know, appreciated every meal my mother ever made.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Glorious, absolutely glorious.
Everything was glorious. Every meal he had was the best meal he'd ever had.
It is the most amazing story that I have ever heard in my life.
Splendid. Things were splendid.
My dad bent over backwards to make people feel appreciated. And anything that anybody did, you know, that they put effort into, especially that they put creative effort into, I think he was really gifted at identifying what was good about it and making them feel affirmed.
Oh, I can do anything but love.
When Mom called and said, your father's kidneys have shut down, they've given him 2 days to 2 weeks, I said, okay, I'm on my way. Dad was amazing to care for. He was amazing. I will never regret a minute that I spent there. Dad ended up living a year.
Dad, just leading by example, treating his end times with a calmness and acceptance and serenity. I tell people that that was the most amazing amazing time of my life.
Dunstan would come up and he would bring dinner, and then he would sit on the porch with Dad and he would play the guitar for a couple of hours, and it was wonderful.
This whole time, if he was in pain, he simply didn't register it. It wasn't in his soul to complain.
Dad was filled with grace and gratitude for everyone around him.
I've never laughed so much or so loud as I did in that week. It was just this cathartic kind of laughter, tears rolling down our eyes. It was laughing and crying. I was able to have this conversation with him, sitting at the table with him and saying, you know, so are you ready? Like I said, are you ready? He said, yeah, I'm as ready as I'm going to be. I'm okay with dying. But he said, but I'm a little concerned about the getting dead part.
When Dad was on his dying bed, I asked him, is there anything left undone? Is there anybody you need me to call? Is there anyone you want to talk to? And he said, no. He said, it's all settled, and I have had a great life. And to me, that's a success.
And he said, leaves will fall and winds will blow, but our faith will hold us strong.
Oh my God! Hey, looky here. Oh my! Look
We look like umbrellas, but you float down like yeah.
Can you say bye to everybody? Bye.
Bye.